When a dealer stops believing in a brand, the auction bid is the first place it shows. Not the press release, not the shareholder call, the Tuesday morning auction lane. I stood in those lanes for 26 years. I watched bids on certain makes start to slide, not because the cars were bad, not because they'd stopped running, but because the buyers in that lane had already done math the owners hadn't. Parts availability, service network depth, how far the nearest certified technician would be in 3 years. They priced all of that in before they raised a hand. The owners found out later, every single time. 8 brands, right now. Tonight I'll tell you what the auction already knows, and what it's going to cost you if you find out from a trade-in offer instead of from me. And I know what you might be thinking. Your brand is in the showrooms, running ads, still in the comparison reviews. You might be right, but the signals I'm going to walk you through tonight don't live in the ads. They live in the floor plan meeting. That's a different conversation than the showroom floor. Both happen in the same building. Only one of them affects what your car is worth when you go to trade it. I spent 26 years as a general manager running dealerships. Before that, the sales floor, the finance office, sales management. I know what gets decided in a floor plan meeting before the day starts on the lot. And I spent those same years around the people adjacent to the business. Auction buyers, wholesale guys, brand representatives. Some of those guys became friends. Friends talk. Here's what planted this video. A few years before I left the industry, I was at the annual dealer conference, dinner, end of the first night, sitting across from a guy who ran a dealer group one state over. Good operator. He mentioned, almost offhand, that he'd been quietly trimming his floor plan on one of his brands. Still had the signage up, still cashing the manufacturer's co-op checks, just ordering fewer units every month. I asked him why. He said the math had stopped working, and he was getting ahead of it. By the time the zone rep noticed, the brand was effectively gone from his store. The customers never got a letter. They found out when they called to schedule service. That's the whole thing. Tonight, I'll give you 3 specific things you can do today. Not someday, today, to find out where your brand stands before you ever walk into that conversation. The 500 and 500X, both discontinued for U.S. buyers. Dealers folded the brand into shared Stellantis space alongside Jeep and Ram. The signage might still exist somewhere. What's behind it doesn't. Here's what the auction tells you. When a recent Fiat 500 goes through the lane next to a comparable Honda, the Fiat gets bid under, not a little. The buyers are pricing parts availability and service access 3 years from now. They do that math every Tuesday. Here's the signal, and it applies to every brand tonight. Pull your trade-in value on Kelley Blue Book, then pull a comparable Toyota or Honda, same year and miles. Write down both. If that gap is widening, the market isn't just aging your car, it's pricing something about your brand. If that gap is widening, the market isn't just aging your car, it's pricing something about your brand. To be fair, the car isn't falling apart. The concern is the trajectory, and the trajectory was set before any announcement came. Now, Chrysler. This one's different because the name is ours, Chrysler 300, town and country. A lot of people watching this grew up in Chryslers. Stellantis has cut the lineup down to one vehicle, the Pacifica minivan. That's it. A manufacturer that once competed in every segment of the American market, down to one nameplate. At the dealer level, Chrysler shares floor space, service bays, and parts pipelines with Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. When priorities get set in that floor plan meeting, the brand selling the fewest units gets the thinnest slice of everything. That's not cruelty. That's how the math works. If you're over 60 and you've owned Chryslers your whole adult life, I'm not telling you to panic. I'm telling you to run that comparison. Your car against a comparable Toyota. Write down the gap. The mechanics know this car. They service it every day. My concern is year 4, the technician time, the parts priority, and whether any of that matches what the salesman implied. Alfa Romeo. And here's where the pattern becomes a pattern. Fiat, Chrysler, Alfa. 3 brands, 1 parent company, 1 shrinking budget. The cars aren't the problem. The Giulia and the Stelvio are genuinely well-built automobiles. But I spent 26 years standing next to wholesale buyers, guys who told me what was getting hard to move. What they hesitated on wasn't always a bad car. It was a car whose service story was getting harder to tell. Alfa's dealer count has been contracting. Some markets have lost dedicated stores, folded into shared Stellantis space with 2 or 3 other brands. Run that same comparison with your Alfa. Stack it against a comparable Lexus from the same year. That gap is the market's verdict. Some of the best dealers I knew ran Alfa stores. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the math done above their heads when a parent company sits down with a budget. Now here's the one that surprises people. Buick. Not a foreign brand, not a complicated ownership structure. General Motors, American, and hundreds of Buick dealers walked away from the franchise voluntarily. When GM committed to electric vehicles, it required dealers to invest in charging equipment, technician training, and new showroom layouts. Not every dealer wanted to make that bet on a brand competing with Chevy and GMC in the same building. GM offered exit packages. A significant number of Buick dealers took them and walked. The brand didn't close. The dealer network got meaningfully smaller. Listen, this matters differently from the others. With Fiat and Alfa, the cuts came from above. With Buick, the dealers made the call themselves. Dealers know these brands from the inside. When enough of them decide a brand's future isn't worth betting on, that's not a reaction to a press release. That's a reaction to what they see every Monday morning. A woman I'll call Helen, longtime Buick owner, came in to trade her LaCrosse. Clean car, low miles. The offer came back below what she expected. The desk called it normal depreciation. It wasn't. The nearest remaining Buick dealer to her home was now over an hour away. The buyer had already factored that in. Helen had no way of knowing the map had changed. She found out at the trade-in desk. Here's what to ask. Say it exactly like this. How many Buick dealers are within 50 miles of here right now? Write it down. How many Buick dealers are within 50 miles of here right now? Write it down. Come back in a year and ask again. The direction of that number tells you more than the number itself. The dealer can't fabricate public information, and the question puts the network reality into the conversation before the offer gets made. GM isn't going anywhere. Buick isn't closing. The network that existed when you signed is not the same network in every market today. That difference belongs in your offer. If this is useful to you, subscribe. This is what the channel is for. Those are the brands with the obvious threads. What comes next is different. The signals get quieter, which is exactly why they're harder to catch. Mitsubishi doesn't make headlines. That's exactly the problem. The Outlander is still on the lot. The Eclipse Cross is still there. The brand hasn't announced anything. It's just been contracting, steadily, without fanfare. And quiet contraction is harder to track than an announcement. At the auction, the hardest cars to bid aren't the ones from brands that made the news. At least those generate interest. The hardest are from brands nobody's talking about anymore. Quiet brands get quiet bids, week after week, because buyers don't want to explain a complicated service story to their next customer. Check your state's Mitsubishi dealer count today. Write the number down. Check it again in 6 months. If it's dropped, even 2 or 3 stores, the trend is set. It doesn't reverse on its own. The car still gets serviced. Parts are available. My concern is the resale math, and that math is already moving. Now, Infiniti. This one matters more because the people who bought Infiniti didn't make a careless decision. Infiniti is Nissan's luxury division. Real price points, real engineering. Buyers compared it to BMW and Lexus, decided the value made sense, and bought. What they couldn't research was what Nissan's financial picture would look like a few years later. Nissan has been under significant global pressure. Restructuring, job cuts, manufacturing reductions. When a manufacturer that size starts cutting that deep, luxury divisions with modest U.S. sales volumes are not the ones that get protected. Some Infiniti markets have already lost dedicated dealers absorbed into Nissan service operations. Here's what bothers me about this one. The buyers did their homework, checked the reliability scores, compared prices. None of that could tell them what was happening in the floor plan meeting 3 months after they drove off the lot. If you're over 60 and you're carrying a long loan on a QX60 or a Q50, run that comparison today. Pull your Infiniti against a comparable Lexus from the same year. Write down the retention gap. That's the market's honest opinion of where the brand stands right now. The car isn't going away, but the premium experience you were sold on is worth verifying. Genesis, the counterintuitive one. The brand is winning awards, growing globally. Good press. If you own a Genesis, you've probably seen the headlines and felt reassured. Here's the thing. The cars are genuinely good. What I'm watching is something different. Genesis launched in the US as a standalone luxury brand. Dedicated studios, a white glove ownership model. That experience still exists in some markets. It doesn't exist in all of them. Some Genesis studios have been absorbed into Hyundai dealership footprints. Here's the test. Pull a GV80 from a recent model year and a comparable Lexus RX from the same year on any valuation tool. Don't look at the dollar figures. Look at the percentage of original value retained. That gap is the market's verdict on whether the experience matched the promise. Genesis isn't going anywhere. Make no mistake about that. But the gap between what the brand promised and what it consistently delivers, that's what lives in your trade-in number. Lincoln. This one's last because it matters most to the most people watching this. Ford pushed Lincoln toward an electric future. That required dealers to invest. Charging equipment, technician training, new showroom layouts. Not every dealer wanted to make that bet. Some gave up the franchise. Others were absorbed into larger Ford groups. The result is a network meaningfully smaller than it was when most Lincoln owners bought their cars. The brand is still there. The experience that made buying a Lincoln feel different from buying a Ford, that's not consistent in every market anymore. A man I'll call Warren traded in a Lincoln MKZ, excellent condition, low miles. He'd kept every service record. The offer came back below what the internet told him to expect. He pushed back. The finance manager, I'll give him credit, he was honest about it, explained that the nearest Lincoln certified service in Warren's area was now 40+ miles away. That distance had been factored into the offer. Warren had bought the car expecting one thing. The map had changed, and it wasn't for the better. Nobody sent him a letter. Listen, none of this is an accident. These are decisions made in boardrooms about where to invest and where to pull back. The people who made those decisions are not driving your car. You are. And when the service appointment that used to take 2 days now takes 2 weeks because the nearest qualified tech is an hour away, that belongs in your trade-in value. Most people don't know to put it there. 8 brands, same sequence every time. The dealer knows. The wholesale buyer knows. The auction adjusts. The owner finds out last. That's the whole thing. That's why this channel exists. Be sure to subscribe. There's a gap between what the showroom tells you about a brand and what the floor plan meeting actually decides. Those two conversations happen in the same building. They don't always agree. The gap between them is where your trade-in value lives. Fiat, already gone, the template that proves it can happen. Chrysler, down to one vehicle on a nameplate that once meant something. Alfa Romeo, the Stellantis pattern now on its 3rd brand. Buick, the one where the dealers themselves voted with their feet. Mitsubishi, contracting without headlines, which is exactly how it catches people off guard. Infiniti, Nissan's global pressure reaching the luxury division. Genesis, a good car carrying a promise the U.S. delivery hasn't fully matched. Lincoln, a name that deserved better than a shrinking network in too many markets. You don't need to carry all 8 of these. Most of you are driving one brand. That's the one that matters. And I want to be clear. The people who bought these cars did exactly what they were supposed to do. They researched, they compared, they bought from the dealer who treated them well. What they didn't have was the information from the floor plan meeting. That's not a failure of research. That's an information gap. And tonight, it's a little more open than it was. 3 things. Pull your brand's dealer count in your state, write it down, and check it again in 6 months. Pull your trade-in value on Kelley Blue Book. Then pull a comparable Toyota from the same year. Write down the gap between those two numbers. And call your dealer and ask one question. How are you running on parts lead times right now? The answer and the pause before the answer will tell you more than any press release. I keep thinking about that dinner I mentioned at the start of this. The guy quietly trimming his floor plan. Still had the signage up, still cashing the co-op checks. The customers found out when they called to schedule service. Nobody lied to them. The information just didn't travel to the people who needed it most. Before you go anywhere, before you trade, before you buy, before you let anybody at a dealership tell you what your car is worth, run those 3 steps. Dealer count, trade-in comparison, parts lead time question. Do those 3 things. That's the video. Next time, there's a number buried in your financing contract that most people never find, and it's the one that costs them the most.